And welcome back in to the next episode of Tribal Council Chat. We are your hosts, as always. My name is Bruce Heller.
And my name is Brett Parnell.
And let's dip our torches in the fire and get started. So last week, we did an episode all about duos. We went through a list of 10 duos that we decided on together and discussed those. And this week, we're doing kind of a sequel / spin-off to that episode. We're doing the same episode structure, but with rivalries this time. So the flip side of the coin.
Was a great episode last week. Got lots of good feedback on it. So looking forward to kind of doing the reverse. Should be great.
Yeah, it should. So you want to go on and dive right in?
Absolutely. So we will start with my first rivalry of the week, number 5. And that is coming from Survivor Millennials versus Gen X. We have Jay Sterrett and eventual winner Adam Klein. I thought this was a great rivalry to put on my list because these two were back and forth all the time. You'd see so many similarities between both players, but at the same time, this heightened level of competition really created a great storyline where Jay and Adam were both got along well on the island, were having the same issues back home, but at the same time, both wanted to win so bad and were such huge fans of the game. What
Yeah,
was your thoughts on it, Bruce?
I love the bond between them. I think the word I would use is frenemy because they are at odds
Yeah.
for a lot of the season. But we also see plenty of scenes where they're getting along together. So just a really cool bond to see between them.
Especially like a good example of that when Jay decides not to steal Adam's family visit.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Just I love the bond between them, and we see them get emotional with that hammock scene, which is really cool to see. So
It is. And definitely two of the most active young players at that time at in that season, and we saw Adam come back in when he was at War, where he made quite a bit of Survivor history.
yeah.
We've seen Jay to the challenge a bit for a few seasons now. So he's definitely still in the reality TV business, and one that I think Jay would make a great player to potentially come back for a second chance season.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I'd love to see Jay come back. He's so entertaining.
Yeah.
And with the challenge, he's not always the best player, but I mean, he's always brings the entertainment.
And he has the chance potential to take down some big players too, as we saw in Total Madness.
True. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next duo now. And again, like our episode last week, where my first duo and the second duo on our total list was from Australian Outback, we are going right back to a rivalry from Australian Outback. I really like that season. If you guys haven't been able to tell yet,
It's a big season. It's like in Australian Outback, everything you want to happen just happens totally unscripted.
yeah, that's my favorite season from the first 10, and probably number 6 overall for me.
Nice.
But the rival we're going to here is Alicia and Kimmy, where we kind of see tension mount between them throughout a lot of the pre-merge, and then at one point in the pre-merge at Kucha camp, we see the two of them finally just boil over, get into an argument, and we get the amazing quote from Alicia, "I will always wag my finger in your face." Just two people that,
Thinking you were about to
yeah,
say a different quote, but that quote was amazing.
yeah, just two people that butted heads from the beginning and went about things completely differently.
The thing I most remember about that is I'm tired of you and the bleeping chickens.
Yeah, true. That same scene too. Those chickens are what caused everything else to finally boil over.
Probably one of the most memorable early on clashes in the history of Survivor.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just yeah, early Survivor brought us some great rivalries because we had this among some others from Australian Outback. We had Kelly and Sue late in the game in Borneo. We have Brandon and Frank next season, very next season in Africa. And then I believe your next one, and this is a great segue, I believe your next one is another pairing from early Survivor within the first 10 seasons.
It's definitely from the first 10. We're going to Survivor Vanuatu, the Islands of Fire, with this next pick. And it's Eliza Orleans and Twyla Tanner.
Yeah.
This was a great rivalry. You just have two women on the same tribe in a split by gender season who literally come from totally different parts of America and we're never going to get along.
Yeah.
And this is the two of them pretty much just go head to head from day one till day 39 when Eliza is will decide that she's going to go after both of the final two for their actions in the game, but without a question, she was voting for Chris to win.
Oh yeah, she took a flamethrower to both of them with her jury speech. But the thing that comes to my mind first when I hear Twyla's name is the jury dragged her so much for lies she told or swearing on different names and stuff. And that's just like if she was playing now doing those same things, it would just be accepted as part of the game and part of strategy. No one would bat an eye over it.
Yeah, can't agree more. And like, even as we saw, like in more recent seasons, and like this, now we're dating back quite a bit, but players like Angelina and Lindsay have said that if a male was playing that way back at that time or even today, it would have been perceived totally differently.
Well, yeah, look how
And
going back to the internet's least favorite Survivor season, I think 43. Look at Jesse. I mean,
yeah,
the fan base, including myself, loved his game, and I thought if he got to the end, he was beating anyone. So,
100%.
and Ricard and Omer also. I compared the three of them last week. All three of them.
It's definitely one of those things that I think nowadays, like I kind of meant touched on last week, that having such a more diverse cast is going to really help the show move forward.
Yeah, and just the evolution of the game also. I think men can get away with more, but because the game has evolved, if Twyla or another woman was doing those exact same things she did in Vanuatu, it would be not viewed near the same way it was in season 9.
Exactly. And I'm sure we're going to talk about a few other rivalries a bit later, but even with any castaway, it just wasn't the fact that you could swear on somebody or directly lie to somebody and it was just part of the game wasn't as much part of the game back then as it is in the 30s and 40s.
Well, yeah, and they were giving her crap for, and I'm saying this as somebody like I love Chris Darty's winning game and his storyline, but they were giving Twyla crap for swearing on people's names. And 2 seasons earlier, we see Sandra swear to something, and in her head, she knows she's going to screw over John and Burton, knowing that her swear was a lie. So Twyla wasn't even the first person to do this. So
No, exactly. And I mean, we saw Johnny do it in the same season.
1,000 times. He got crap for it too, though. So
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're gonna move on to the next one. And this is, you have a very interesting one here because it's a three-person rivalry.
yeah, so it's one person versus two people, and this is still old school Survivor, but less old than our previous two. We're jumping up to season 18 Token Chains now with Sierra Reed going up against Tyson and Coach. And Sierra is one of my favorites from this season just because you look at Token changes the season with a first impressions vote. So when you look at that, the two people that got voted out, but not really, handle it very different ways. On one side, you've got Sandy, who's upset and vindictive and screw everyone, I'm out for myself. And on the other hand, you've got
Yeah, knock the lights out.
no, you're good. And on the other hand, you've got Sierra, who uses the opportunity to get a head start on the shelter instead of idle hunting and tries to work her way back into good standing with her tribe. And for whatever reason, Tyson and Coach just have it out for her. And Tyson so satisfyingly gets blindsided before Sierra gets voted out.
Yeah.
She exposes Coach for lying to the Jalapows right in front of them. And he can't even, he gets caught red-handed, but because she's more unpredictable, they keep Coach around and take her out, unfortunately. But really strong rivalry here between her versus these two guys that just didn't like her for whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard to know what Coach is thinking more than any other cast.
That season, both times I've watched it, I just at least once per episode, and this is me watching it by myself, by the way. It's not like I'm saying this to everyone, but at least once in an episode, I just find myself saying, "Oh, shut up, Coach!" Like, it's just so irritating.
Oh, I am this exact same way.
Right? And he's more Coach-y that season than he is his next two seasons. So
Yeah.
his trip to exile is admittedly incredible television, but
It's probably, I would say, the best edited episode of all time.
yeah, it's a very coachy episode.
Yeah.
We've turned coach into a description here, and Survivor fans listening to this are going to know exactly what we mean by this word we just invented.
Absolutely. Watch it stick in Survivor fan jury now.
Oh, I hope so. Okay, and so that moving on from that one, you've got one next that is in New School Survivor. That's an interesting one to talk about.
New School Survivor really like original New School in the Dark Era. And this is Abby Maria Gomes and O.C. Sinamur.
Yeah, so this is a fun one.
Fine. Yeah, it is. It's one of those ones that, like, I'll be honest, I just don't know where this rivalry really came from because it seemed to be that that alliance was going so well
Yeah,
early on in the game. And out of nowhere, Abby is telling OC, if you come for me, you're dead. And I'm like, where did this come from?
I have a
And next thing you know, it becomes the rivalry of the season when I was expecting that to maybe be like Penner and Jeff Kent.
yeah, I have a guess for where the rivalry came from, and that's Pete, because Pete was
Yeah,
trying to sow mistrust between them, and my guess is he probably got into Abby's head.
that would make a lot of sense. And I mean, I don't know what's accurate or who was there or who wasn't, but a rivalry is strong if what the rumor I've heard is accurate that OC declined second chance solely because Abby was on the ballot too.
Yeah, well, go on YouTube sometime and watch the Ponderosa video from where Abby gets voted out. That's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably one of the most hostile Ponderosas I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's a lot to watch.
But yeah, that would make sense that you say that it was probably sown by Pete somehow.
Yeah, because that's what he was trying to do, I believe. I
Yeah.
haven't watched the season for a while, but
And then OC goes as the merge boot, which kind of ends it. But then he and Abby end up in pretty much the minority for till they're both gone.
Yeah, for a tribe that didn't go to tribal pre-merge, Tandang was kind of a disaster post-merge somehow.
Yeah. That was an interesting season too, where you just see like literally tribe gets decimated. And then once those put into two tribes and Denise and Malcolm merge over to Tandang and Calabao and are split, you still see Tandang just winning and winning and winning.
Yeah, Denise went to every tribal that season. So,
If not, I think the only player to do that.
I lost your sound for a second. Can you say that last sentence again?
I think she is maybe the only player to do that.
I think you're right. I believe she is. And so,
I mean, Michelle went to most of them, but not the one where Amber went home.
yeah. And then Michelle's first season, she never went pre-merge. So that's kind of
No,
the opposite.
completely. So next up, I just mentioned the name Jonathan Penner, and you have a rivalry featuring Jonathan Penner, one of a great character in the franchise.
Yeah, he's incredible television. I love Penner. And this one is from his first season, Cook Islands, him and Candace, which this is a funny pair because if you want to think of Penner rivalries, there's more than one that come to mind.
Yeah.
When you think of Candace, there's also more than one that come to mind because her and Penner, her and Brad Culpepper. I don't remember if there was a strong one for her on Heroes versus Villains. I don't think so, but
No.
with Penner, you got him and Candace on Cook Islands. You've got him and Suri butting heads on Micronesia. And then you mentioned him and Jeff Kent butting heads on Philippines. So Penner just always seems to find someone to butt heads with. But on his first season, it was Candace, who is kind of weird that this ended up being as strong of a rivalry as it was, because after they were the two people, they mutinied together. So you'd think they would band together after that. But after he flips back to vote with I2 again, we really see him and Candace have it out on the beach arguing over whether she's calling him a weasel or saying he weaseled his way in as a verb.
Yeah. I think with this one, even more so than it being a good rivalry, it's almost the its biggest impact is just how powerful the super idol was, which wasn't even a super idol at the time in Cooks and in Exile Island. It was just the immunity idol that
Yeah.
you could play after the votes were read. And that was really essentially with Yule's idol being that powerful, he could basically get Pino to do whatever he wanted, even though he just mutinied the day before.
Yeah.
And I think that goes a long way to seeing how idols have kind of become more in numbers but less in power over the years.
Yeah, and I heard Probst talk about the idols on his podcast where he was doing an episode on different twists and stuff. And they introduced it in 11 and it really didn't make that big of a difference that season. So what happened was they were trying to think of a way to improve it and have it have more of an impact. Then after 12 and 13 they realized it was too overpowered, so they changed it to what it became. But
well, probably neither Terry nor Yule are in the finale if the super idol was, or if the idol wasn't as powerful back then as it is, or has a similar power to what it is today.
yeah, but I love Yule and I love that he won, so I'm glad he had that.
Oh, I am too.
And if Terry makes the end, he likely wins. So
yeah.
So speaking of Terry, this ends season 12. This seems like a logical segue into your next one.
Yeah, my next one, I can preface this by saying, call ambulance, Terry's whining on the course.
Yeah.
It's Terry Dietz and us from Survivor Exile Island. This one, I watch it from a bit more of a personal angle because I guess a lot of people watch this rivalry through the challenges. And yes, I'll for complete credit, it was one of the most epic challenge rivalries of all time with these two guys just competing day after day after day, first and second, trying Terry winning and us doing everything he can to try to tear him down.
Yeah, for sure.
But as we see, like when Aris wins that reward and gets one of the greatest rewards of all time to go to an engineering marvel, which is the Panama Canal with Suri. That's like a bucket list item for me as world traveler. So,
Yeah. And even
and but then go ahead.
we see this rivalry kind of spill outside of the challenge a little bit when it comes to the family visit, too.
Yeah, that's exactly the point I was gonna bring up, and why I said I view it more personally. Is I rewatched this a few months into COVID when I discovered what Paramount Plus was, and when I rewatched that, it was such a unique timing I found. I watched this the day before. I watched the family visit in Exile Island for the first time as an adult the day before the Winners at War family visit aired live.
Oh, cool.
So it was really unique because I am, as I'm sure a lot of my friends listening knows, one of tens of millions of single adults across North America. And I watched that interaction where Terry basically said something that made me lose all respect for him, and that's that his loved one visit was more valuable than either Aris's or Danielle's.
Yeah, that was weird. I didn't like that.
I didn't either. And then the next day, so this is like 15 hours later, I watch every single player bring out the husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, other than one. My favorite player in the history of Survivor, Michelle Fitzgerald, bringing out her sister, who's her closest, um, the closest person to her in the world, is clearly defined by all of those stories together around the world.
Yeah.
So I thought it was so unique to just like see that moment and to go from a moment that I'm like, this is just uncomfortable TV for someone in my lifestyle to watch, to the next day, the same episode in a different season, showing what was, at least to me, one of the most representative moments in the history of Survivor, especially with that moment being seen through the eyes of my favorite player of all time.
Yeah. Those are both really cool moments. And we see Aris and Terry, the rivalry grows throughout the season. We see them in the challenges, competing all the time. We see the loved ones thing. And it all culminates after final immunity when Danielle wins. And the
I
two
was
of
going
them
to
now
say
have to
shout out to
compete.
Danielle for beating both of them.
And we now have to see the two of them compete to get her to pick them and take them to the end. So it all came to a head right there. Really great rivalry, seeing it grow over time. And we get to see both of them come back. So that was a bonus.
Yeah. So now we have one a rivalry from one of your favorite seasons, and then we're gonna go into a second segment before we get to our number ones. Where I know we wrote down three names, but I think we're doing well for time. So where you had two and I had one, I might throw in a quick segment of a second moment as well.
Okay. So the last one before we get to our pinnacle rivalries is from Survivor China. And that is Courtney and Jean Robert, who they just don't like each other. Courtney, being Courtney, has a lot of hilarious confessionals and quotes about this.
Yes.
One of the chronologically first ones I remember is when she's talking about Jean Robert getting too close in the shelter and him saying he needs to curl up to people to get warm. And she goes, I'm not even heavy enough to keep myself warm, get off of me.
Yeah.
Or when she makes fun of him for calling himself a bad boy. Or even while he's on the jury and might have the chance, like he has a powerful vote, sitting there and asking him if he won an immunity, knowing he didn't. Just a lot of hilarious scenes between these two not liking each other.
She's one of the most comical players that will be on the season or on
Very
this
sassy. I
franchise.
love it.
Yeah. So now we're gonna go in. Bruce and I each have two, what we call is like historic moments. So as opposed to focusing on rivalries as a whole, we're gonna talk about some specific big moments in Survivor where rivalries just kind of were notable in the season and really took off to define the rest of the season that season.
Yeah. So these moments, at least the three that I came to my mind, are moments where these scenes come to my head when I think of Survivor rivalries, but these aren't rivalries like the ones we've talked about that just last for multiple episodes or throughout a whole season.
Exactly. So let's start it off with the first one we wrote down, which was one of mine, and that goes back to Survivor All Stars. We have Boston Rob and Lex Vandenberg. You take care of her, and I'll take care of you.
Yeah.
Probably one of the biggest betrayals in the history of Survivor, where the person being betrayed is one of the most uh, bitter and defensive players in the history of Survivor towards getting votes, let alone getting blindsided and finding himself on the jury.
Yeah.
Um, I thought this moment really defines like the change in Survivor from that like friendly game we saw in the first few seasons to really evolving, as I know I've said before, from Brian to Sesternino to Fairplay, and now capped off with Boston Rob pulling the biggest move to date. And the reason this is such a great move is because one, Rob at that point is playing everybody. He has an alliance with pretty much everyone in the game. He picked Amber's obviously his number one. They still are to this day.
Yep.
And they both pick Rupert and Jenna to go to the final four with them. They knew that when they got to the final two, either of them were going to win, and they were happy with that.
Yeah.
So, with getting rid of Lex, it's like he takes this very personally, but I also think one of the most unique things in this situation is we got to remember this is All Stars. Survivor is not the challenge. This is the first time we're seeing people with pre existing relationships play the game together. So, Lex talking about, I'm getting betrayed by my friend, that was real for him. But in the first 7 seasons of Survivor, the whole premises was 16 strangers forced to live together till only one survives to win $1 million.
Yeah. And it is what you said. It was a betrayal on Rob's part. But honestly, I have a really hard time feeling bad for Lex here. Partially because like it is a game, but we had just watched him pull this whole like it's a game, don't take it personal line that he gets so mad at Rob for. We just watched him do the same thing to Ethan when he voted Ethan out instead of keeping Ethan and getting rid of Jerry. Yeah. And we see him tell Ethan, who he survived through all the hardships of Survivor Africa, which is arguably the toughest season, and then vote him out and tell him it's just a game I'm playing here, and then gets mad at Rob for doing the exact same thing. So like I get where he's
Absolutely.
coming from, but I have a hard time feeling bad for Lex here.
Yeah. Let's just pick one of these two because I guess we're longer than I thought, and then go into our number ones.
Okay, and then we have the game at the end too. So I had the Danielle and Amanda catfight for the idol and Bobby, John, and Jamie yelling in each other's face at the challenge. We've already talked about a challenge rivalry with Horace and Terry, so let's kind of talk about the idol cat fight from Heroes versus Villains a little bit. So take it away.
Yeah, that I wonder what was going through Colby's head at that time.
Oh, he just wanted to watch the movie. He probably, my guess is he didn't care at all what was happening around him.
I mean, he should have found a way to get the clue for himself. But
Yeah. Or, I mean, the heroes are outnumbered by this point. Take Amanda's side at least. That helps you. She's on your side, sort of.
yeah. But no, definitely one of the most unexpected scenes, I guess you could say, in Survivor.
Yeah, such a funny scene, though.
Yeah.
So funny. I was just watching Treasure Island, as Colby said. So, our two
So do we want
pinnacle
to get into our
rivalries.
number?
You want to take it away with your top rivalry?
Yeah, my top rivalry can be summed up in one line, and it's I can get loud too. What the bleep?
Yeah,
Johnny Fairplay versus Sandra Diaz Twine.
such a good one.
They were just put on the same tribe, never saw eye to eye. Sandra, rightfully so, didn't trust John for a single minute.
No,
John didn't like her and apparently does now, but I never expected that until I start seeing them doing viewing parties together, which
yeah,
is amazing.
it's hilarious. I love that.
And oh, so do I. And just it was like at that point, also, I think the great thing about this rivalry is that you have Will, someone who got voted out third, that shouldn't be in the game at this point, winning final immunity, and basically has no chance at all, and has to pick which one of them is going to win $1 million.
Did she know she had no chance, though?
I think so. I get the opinion the reason she took Sandra is simply she wanted Sandra to win. She didn't want Fairplay to win, but I may be wrong.
No, that makes sense. Okay, and so also
Go
I
ahead
would
with
have
yours.
loved to have seen Fair Play be on Heroes versus Villains and have this rivalry along with the Sandra Russell rivalry going on at the same time,
Yeah.
and to see how
And the Rupert Fairplay rivalry.
yeah, and just to see how
Yeah.
Fair Play and Russell would have interacted with each other would have been entertaining.
Yeah.
Just give
Go
Fair
ahead with
Play
your
Randy
number
or
one.
Tyson's spot. So going into our last rivalry is this is in my mind the best rivalry in the history of the show because they played on all they both played 3 times. They played together all 3 times and we're on opposite sides every time, and that's Colby and Jerry. And we see the rivalry grow over time. He gets to vote her out in Australian Outback. She votes him out on All Stars. And then she votes him out again on Heroes versus Villains. But by the time that third one comes, she's doing it with a tear in her eye because you spend that much time around someone 3 times, you're going to grow close, even if you're on opposite sides of the game every time.
Yeah. Absolutely. One of easily the most iconic rivalry of all time, especially like it's starting out with Joey being attracted to Colby,
Yeah.
only for him to be not interested at all. They go on a road together. He blindsides her that episode.
Pretty
She
sure he
gets
threw.
further than him in All Stars.
Yeah.
Can't Perfect choice to end the episode.
Pretty sure he threw a bucket of water at her at some point in the Outback,
She did.
which is just, it's very Colby.
Yeah.
So moving on to,
Pretty sure his brother almost threw a bucket of water at him a few 18 seasons.
yeah. Oh, that loved ones challenge and him getting mad at his brother for not being good at tossing water.
Anyway, we should almost out of time. Do you want to wrap up with Ally Blindside First Boot?
Yeah, so the 3 names I have for you for a line blindside versus boot, I don't have a theme like I normally do. I mean, I kind of do, but I just kind of threw together 3 names of players you like, and that is
Yeah.
Michelle, Parvati, and Lauren O'Connell.
Good selection. I am going to ally with Michelle, as I'm sure you expected, kind of
Yeah,
like Lauren. Lauren with Kelly. Michelle and I laughed on what's it called, Cameo Live, about the possibility when I told her that I applied about potentially playing in a captain season that she was on. Um, I am going to blindside Lauren because who knows, maybe I can get an idol from her. And I am going to first boot Rivalry because she is too dangerous in this game.
Yeah, you can be the goat slayer because Denise was the queen slayer. So
Yeah. So the ones I have for you are three names that I considered putting as rivals in this. Well, three names of players that would have been in rivalries I considered, and those are Kelly Wigglesworth, Kelly Goldsmith, and Aubrey Bracco.
okay, this is interesting. So I'm gonna probably gonna take out the strongest player first, and I'm gonna first boot Aubrey because we did see her get so close to winning her first season. And if Michelle's not there, Aubrey wins. And Aubrey played an incredible game that season. So take her out first. The thing is, I don't know about the two Kellys because we've seen Wigglesworth get to the end and almost win, but we've seen her come back in second chances and not make it too far past the merge. So, and then Kelly Goldsmith is a bit of a wild card, I guess. So I'll blindside her just because I feel like she has more of an ability to be unpredictable than Wigglesworth and ride to the end with Wigglesworth.
Great choice. So that was an amazing episode. Can't wait to interact with you guys on social media this week, and we'll be back here next week for another one. Grab your torches and head back to camp.
Bye, everyone.